Now, you may recall that we launched this show back in April with a series of discussions that are aimed at decoding the BARC measurement system just before it kicked in. Now, 3 months down the line, we assess how it's done so far. And if there is one currency that can apply across media, that's print, TV, outdoor, even digital. At the Exchange for Media ACE Awards last week, we spoke about this with the heads of India's leading media agencies just to figure out if this idea has merit.
As television in India comes of age, there is a plethora of channels vying for eyeballs across genres and languages. In such a scenario, broadcast measurement systems have been in the spotlight, not just for programming and scheduling, but also for ad sales and branding strategy. But this space has also seen a lot of activity over the last 2 years. As controversies around TAM ratings made matters worse, Broadcast Audience Research Council, or BARC, was seen as a revolutionary new system that offered more transparency and accuracy. But in the 3 months since its April launch, has it managed to live up to expectations?
I think any new system, will take some time to kind of settle down and to provide stable data. I think BARC is kind of being launched in phases. In phase 1, we had household data coming out, and we just recently started getting, individual level data. Very soon we will have the sample size go up from 10,000 to 20,000, and we'll also have rural markets being covered, and eventually the sample size is going to hit 50,000 with a good representation across different markets. So it's a phased kind of a rollout. Obviously, BARC is a system set up basis the recommendations of the Amit Mitra committee, which were made a few years ago. It took a long while to get the system off the ground, obviously, because it was the first time that industry bodies were coming together to set up a TV measurement system. So it's a little early. I think one thing I'd definitely like to say is I think the industry bodies have all worked very closely together to ensure that the transition is smooth. And I think only time will tell in terms of the stability of BARC.
While the jury is still out on BARC, last week the Exchange for Media Group hosted the first of its kind Media ACE Awards, which is an attempt to recognize media agencies for their work and contribution to the Indian media industry as a whole. In its inaugural year, the Media ACE Awards saw Mukund Rajan, the brand custodian of the Tata brand, giving the keynote address and sitting down for a candid chat with industry veteran Sam Balsara to discuss what goes into building a truly global brand.
I think you need to remain true to who you are and what we stand for. So the core brand messages that we want to communicate about Tata globally are that Tata is global, Tata is trustworthy, and Tata is a good corporate citizen. As long as we ensure that all our companies are contributing in their own fashion in different markets to those same messages, I think we will be successful in communicating the proposition around the Tata brand. We will invest in brand building from the group center, but equally we would expect our group companies to also play their fair share in helping to communicate those same messages about the Tata brand. So it's really a combined effort between the Tata Group companies and the Tata Group Center in presenting the Tata brand in a particular fashion in global markets.
On the sidelines of the event, we spoke to key stakeholders to find out if the solution to the age-old problem was to have a common measurement currency, not just for broadcast, but across all the different media channels.
Well, I think that's the need of the day. If we had a common currency, and even better than a common currency, single source data, then I think that would solve more than 80% of all the challenges that marketers, advertisers, media agencies and media owners to some extent face. And I'm confident that given all the technology advances and given all the substantial increase in budgets that are expected over the next few years, there'll be enough money available for research to be able to afford this single source data covering all media. But yes, I think as the first step, I think a single currency across print, TV, radio would be very welcome.
Another stakeholder in this would be advertisers, who will decide where the big bucks will be spent based on insights from such data.
Feasible, I don't know, but desirable definitely, because in the end, all media is about reaching audiences, and so if there's one single way by which we can judge and measure and then compare options that we've got, that would be a great place to be. Now, obviously, different people use different combination of media, and therefore, in the end, any business model for feasibility has to be viable, and that remains for somebody to take on that mantle and explore that option out. But as a marketer, yes, would we want a single currency by which, not so much currency, but a single yardstick or measure by which we can measure our audience, reach across channels? That would be perfect.
I think that the currency should also take time to evolve, especially in new media. In matured media, I think we have enough there as a learning on board. It should be taken together and the currency should be set up. Definitely currency needs to be there. On the traditional media side, some of it is there, some of it needs to be. But on the digital side, I think we should wait till we actually define a currency so that it is, in that sense, more comprehensive and exhaustive.
But the opinion is divided on this. While there is a faction that believes in using the same yardstick for all platforms, those in traditional media are not in favor.
Common currency is not a feasible idea. The reason why there are different media vehicles is because they have different offerings. They have different kinds of engagement and different ways in which they reach out to the audience. And those differences need to be captured. To have a common currency is actually going away from that individual engagement, that customized engagement that different vehicles offer. What instead I might look at is it possible for me to get a measurement from the same audience for different vehicles, as against getting one measure for all the vehicles?
The audiences will keep moving from one platform to the other platform. So it's important to see that how this movement is happening, and therefore engagement with each medium becomes rather more important than to have one currency which provides you across this thing.
These are valid concerns given the intrinsic differences in the nature of different media. Can such pitfalls be worked around to create a system that is feasible on the ground?
I think needed, and while all of us are talking of, most individual mediums are worried if there is going to be a common currency, and they are all resisting it. But I think it is time that when we have about 50, 60 touch points, 70 touch points, and an organization like ours, we actually map 50, 60 touch points. Now, if you cannot evaluate each of them one against the other, it's pointless, because you cannot keep saying that each medium stands for itself and is a differentiated medium, so you can't compare. At some stage you should be able to compare, which is a quantity level, and then qualitatively, of course, you will add your experience, the kind of response that people have been having, the ROI on the medium, the strength of that medium, all that will happen. And we use our qualitative metric to upweight or downweight that. But at the basic level, I think we must and should move towards a common metric of cost per thousand.